Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining. This is Jen Johnson with the Customer Marketing Team. We'll get started in 5 minutes. Thank you for joining. We'll get started in 5 minutes. Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. This is Jen Johnson with the Workday Customer Marketing Team. We will get started in 4 minutes. Thank you for joining. Please stand by. We'll get started in 4 minutes. Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. This is Jen Johnson from the Workday Customer Marketing Team. We will get started with today's webinar in 3 minutes. Again, we'll get started with today's webinar in 3 minutes. Thank you for joining, and please stand by. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. This is Jen Johnson from the Workday Customer Marketing Team. We will get started with today's webinar in 2 minutes. Thank you for joining, and please stand by. Again, we'll get started with today's webinar in 2 minutes. Please stand by, and thank you for joining. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. This is Jen Johnson from the Workday Customer Marketing Team. We'll get started with today's webinar in 1 minute. Again, we'll get started with today's webinar in 1 minute. Thank you for joining. Please stand by. Okay, good morning, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining today's Workday reference webinar featuring Workday customer Roberta Roth, Director of Change Management at Nevada System of Higher Education, or NSHE. My name is Jennifer Johnson. I am a member of the Workday customer marketing team. Next slide, please. Before we transition to the featured customer content for today's webinar, I would like to go over a few housekeeping items with you. Today's webinar is streamed through your computer, or you may dial in with your phone. Attendees will stay on mute for the duration of the call. Please use the Q&A widget to submit your questions for the presenters. Questions will be asked after the presentation during our Q&A segment. We will ask as many questions as time allows. This webinar is being recorded and will be distributed after the live event. Next slide, please. Today's webinar will follow the format you see on your screen. Our customer speaker will give remarks regarding the Nevada System of Higher Education Workday journey for approximately 20 minutes, and then we will open the chat for questions. Without further ado, I would like to introduce you to today's customer speaker, Roberta Roth, Director of Change Management at Nevada System of Higher Education. Roberta, we appreciate your time and sharing the NSHE experience with the Workday community. Let's get started. Roberta?
Good morning, Jen, and thank you all for the invitation to participate. I'm looking forward to sharing our journey with you and some lessons we've learned. Hopefully there will be information I deliver that will be helpful to many of you in the audience. So with that hope in mind, I'll begin. They wanted me to tell you a little bit about myself. I joined the Nevada System of Higher Education in 2001, and I came in as the Director of Applications and Systems for the central IT organization under the Chancellor's Office, an organization called SCS, System Computing Services. SCS's mission was to support and deliver enterprise-wide applications and services across all of the institutions across the state. So each institution has their own IT shop that delivers local technologies to support the campus needs. We supply the needs statewide. We support the wide area network. We have a very robust fiber and lease line network that we manage to connect our institutions across the state together, for example. We supply internet connectivity, video conferencing services to our campuses, as well as the line of business applications, such as payroll, human resources, and financials that, of course, we're here to talk about today. So in 2006, we really kind of began our journey to modernize our systems in order to remain competitive. And this is how we ended up getting to Workday. I stepped out of my role as Director of Applications and Systems and into a role of strategic planning. And then when we did finally begin the Workday implementation, I moved into the role of communication and change management lead for the implementation with a small but mighty team that supported our early change management activities, this RFP and selection process, and both during and after implementation, we are responsible for communication, change management activities, making sure training is happening, that testing is done, and we also support the support desk. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. So what is the Nevada System of Higher Education? NSHE, as we call it, is really, it is all public higher education in Nevada is organized under the Nevada System of Higher Education. We have 2 universities in the state, UNR up in the north and UNLV in Las Vegas. We have a research institute, a DRI, that does environmental research. We have they do air, they do water, they do renewable resources, and they have no students, but they are part of the system, and they have a location in both Reno and Las Vegas. We have 4 community colleges: Western Nevada College, Truckee Meadows Community College, and Great Basin College. And we have and those are in our northern and eastern territories. And we have the College of Southern Nevada in Las Vegas, which is our largest institution. From a headcount standpoint, we have over 45,000 students in that community college. We have a system office that oversees all of our institutions. That has a location in both Reno and Las Vegas. We have about 200 campus and extension locations throughout Nevada. We employ about 26,000 people and just under 110,000 students. Each of our institutions has its own president that reports up to the chancellor. The chancellor serves as the chief executive officer for NSHE at the system office level, and he reports to the Board of Regents. We are governed by a 13-member elected Board of Regents who's responsible for setting policy and approving budgets and other such matters. NSHE has an operating budget of about $1.5 billion. So what were the challenges we had before we went to Workday? And I think many of you face similar challenges. We had 30-year-old legacy systems that were highly customized. These were old mainframe COBOL applications developed back in the time when customization and being able to do things exactly the way you wanted was the way of the world. That's why we had programmers. They were heavily customized to the preferences of each of our institutions. They were heavily transaction-based, and they were very batch-oriented. We actually had 7 separate financial systems. Although we used the same software platform, we had 7 different implementations of that software in order to accommodate the preferences of each of the institutions. We also had 2 HR payroll systems. We were heavily manual, a lot of paper processes supporting those transaction systems. A lot of that caused duplication of effort and input data, and our transaction times were incredibly long. Contracts took weeks to get signed. It was a paper process. We had annual contracts that needed to be signed. It would have to go through a variety of desks, all the way up to the president to get approvals, and it was all a manual paper flow. It would take hours, days, weeks, months. Our expense reports, reimbursing expense reports to our employees, took over a month or more before they received reimbursement for the expenses they incurred when traveling on behalf of NSHE. So our service levels were generally poor. And our data was used inconsistently across institutions. Because we were highly customized in our application areas, people were allowed to use data differently, as well as how they calculated things. For example, we had, when we began looking at our requirements, we uncovered the fact that FTE was actually calculated multiple ways across our institutions. Reporting, because of the way we used data differently, reporting was always pushed to the system. We did not have transparency into data. We could not pull information aggregated at the system level. Everything had to be pushed to us. So there was really no way to understand what was being sent, how things were necessarily calculated. And so we wanted better reliability, better integrity in our data than we had at the time. Even campus and internal processes and procedures were inconsistent, and sometimes policy set by the board was not necessarily being implemented uniformly across all institutions. For example, recruiting and onboarding were done very differently at each institution depending on their preference. And oftentimes they missed policy directives or even introducing policy to people as they were onboarded correctly. Annual employment contracts did not necessarily all have the required signatures according to policy. Sometimes they overlooked having the president see the contract. And even travel expenses. So although policy gave us a per diem based on our travel, whatever.
Roberta, excuse me, we're getting a little feedback and some folks on the line are having trouble hearing you. Is it possible for you to get a little closer to your phone, please?
Well, I'm not on a phone. I'm actually speaking through my computer. Let me know if it happens again, though, please.
Okay, will do. Thank you.
Is this better? Is this better?
Yes, that's better. Yes.
Okay. And some of our campuses, for example, required faculty to provide meal receipts for everything that was done, where other campuses just said, hey, we're going to use the per diem policy. So we had inconsistencies just due to the way people preferred to do business. So what changed? Why did we decide to change? A lot of it was based on some technology. Besides the fact that we knew that our systems were not as efficient as they could be, they didn't give us good decision-making information. They were coming to end of life. The skills to support the COBOL mainframe environment, they were disappearing from the workforce, and vendors were no longer supporting the products. Our regents had a vision. And they wanted us to stop being so institution-centric and to have a system-centric future. So in order to do that, we had to transform our business to focus on system-level thinking instead of on each institution's preferred way of doing business. So in June of 2011, our board adopted an efficiencies and effectiveness report, which is still available today, I think, out on our website, which called for major process changes, new IT systems, and a focus on shared services. So in the fall of 2011, we turned our attention to the HR and finance areas with the formation of an Integrate 2. That's the name of our project, was Integrate 2. It is truly integrating our applications in Nevada. So our Integrate 2 steering committee, as well as two subcommittees, one for finance and one for human resources. So rather than replicating existing business processes in a new system, our project was to recommend changes about how NSHE should conduct their business operations. Two separate pieces of work began at that time. One was, because we had seven separate systems, we had 7 separate charts of accounts. So we needed to make sure, and this was part of managing change, we needed to make sure that people understood we could operate under one. And we also had different ways of processing onboarding, purchasing, requisitions. All of our processes were very unique and customized to our campuses. So we started work on business process reengineering. We contracted with an outside consultant to understand if we could live with one chart of accounts and help us understand if we could live with common processes. As a result of the studies, it was apparent and it was presented to our regions and our communities that it was possible to do both of those things. And they actually had some recommended formats and business processes that came with the reports. Additionally, they also identified 10 areas that were candidates for shared services where we really could do something in a central fashion and make it more efficient and more effective for the system. So this was really the beginning of how we managed change. We had to start getting mind share, changing the way people thought about things, helping them think as a system as opposed to a campus. So it's a very complex culture, and it's kind of like turning a luxury liner, you know, like the Queen Mary. It doesn't happen fast. It happens very slow and steady, and so we began to plant the seeds for why we needed to change and what the benefits were. So why Workday? Following the work we did to study how we could come together under a common chart of accounts and and can we really redesign our business processes so that we can do things the same way that would work for everyone. We had a very extensive RFP process. In August of 13, the selection phase began, and we issued a bid in January of 2014. The screening of the responses for this integrated system was very rigorous, and it involved functional leaders and experts across all of our institutions. They scored the responses, they asked follow-up questions, they collaborated together as a team. So they came together as a system to review this together and listened to what each other had to say. The finalists were selected. We had a short list of 2 finalists. Those finalists had to go through rigorous demonstrations with scripts developed and outlined by our schools. We also had a core team of people representing the functional areas in our institutions. We took them on specific site visits to visit the customers of those final vendors that were selected. And then we went to the vendor briefing centers itself and talked to them about some serious things about the futures of their product. So after all that work, Workday was selected in October 2014. And why? Really, the feedback we got, or what we presented to our board, was that we felt that Workday was a very intuitive system. It is how people worked, and it helped people understand how we could do things together. So extremely intuitive. It was truly integrated. It wasn't interfaced. We didn't have batch runs. It was truly an integrated system, so that a change that was made in one place was available to everyone at the same time. It was immediate, and so it was truly an integrated real-time system. We felt that the cloud-based next-generation technology is the wave of the future. It was subscription-based, not purchase. And so for us to understand how we would manage growth, how we are going to manage unexpected capacity issues that we never thought about. We know we had a predictable subscription cost, and we knew where we were going, and we left it to the hands of the experts, and we were going to run our business rather than develop code or infrastructure. It was a common code base. I think any of you who are still out there with legacy apps understand that because you highly customize a vendor's code, or when you highly customize a vendor's code, anytime a new release or a new operating system is brought out, all of those customizations have to be redone, retested. It's a very expensive and cumbersome process. It was not efficient at all. With Workday and the common code base, we are always current. And all of the customers are on the same code base, giving us a huge platform of a group of people. That community out there is ready and able to collaborate with you. It gives us just more resources. We love the fact that it was focused on business processes versus traditional transactions, and that those business processes were based on best practices in those standard processes. It really was in the evaluation committee's judgment. It provided the strategic path that our regions wanted us to be at, where they were hoping we would be in the next 10 to 15 years. This was going to give us the leverage to get there. So we launched our project in February of 2015. And we went live with all modules at all institutions in October of 2017. We had, originally we were more optimistic about when we thought we would be able to go live, because we really wanted things to go live October of 2016. We had to reset our expectations because things were taking a little bit longer than we thought they would. Even with all the work we did in advance of in building the mindset for a shared business process that we could all use, when it came down to sitting and designing it, It did take a little bit of time, and it was important that every voice be heard, and that these experts from our campuses came to agreement on this is the business process we believe is the best business process for ENSHI that will all work for us. So it took a little bit longer. Conversion was another area that took longer. Our data was not necessarily clean. I think I already mentioned we use data differently, so reconciling that data also took a little bit longer. And payroll is a complicated thing, so moving payroll requires a lot of extra testing and things. So we just slowed ourselves down. We wanted to do this right, so we ended up doing it, going live on October of 2017. You can see this chart has all these different boxes, like those are different dates, but I think it's just to spread out what we did implement in those 30 months. The grants management piece does include Everett reporting, and also in the financial box, what isn't in there is budgets. We did budget, and we also did customer accounts. But these are the modules we went live with: HCM core, compensation, time tracking, and we even put in our academic structure. So we put the basics of that in by the time we went live. So everything went live in October of 2017. In April of this year, we actually implemented Workday planning. We had a very specific scope that was basically used by a small team of people at our system office to help develop our biennial budget to send to our state legislature for funding. We are funded by the state. That was a very successful implementation, and the scope was successful. In 2019, probably along around February, we're going to roll Workday planning out to our campuses to allow them to create their fiscal year budget for 1920. And we are already taking a look at adaptive insights. We will be moving that direction sometime in the future, but we have not yet made a decision yet about what that implementation will look like. So I guess the only other thing that I want to say about this slide is, while all this stuff was happening in terms of the technical implementation, we were doing training, and a lot of change management. So this is a little bit on how we deployed. I'm going to try and do this as quickly as possible, but we did have a steering committee. Our steering committee was, of course, our chancellor, our vice chancellors, a special counsel, and then we had our execs from Workday, as well as the implementer company that we chose to partner with. They sat at our executive level, and sometimes they had to break ties, but they had to deal with some of the complexities that we were faced with, like the delay of the go live. We had a project management office with a director, project manager, some implementation advisors, as well as Workday's delivery assurance was part of that office. And we had a group of campus executives that were used in an advisory capacity. The green boxes down below represent really the pillars of our experts from our institutions who were involved with our implementation consultants to help design those new business processes. And they were empowered to make decisions. But if they couldn't come to an agreement on, I'm not sure if this is the best way or this is the best way, we used our campus executives as that sounding board so that they could then evaluate the options and come back with a recommendation. So there was always a way to escalate either an exception request or something that we couldn't decide on at the working group level. So we had a core team of business analysts and functional leads that oversaw both our implementation consultants as well as campus subject matter experts who came together to form an HR team, a financials team, payroll team. We had a technical and conversion team, a policy lead who was really looking at not only are we implementing policy consistently, but do our policies need revision or change? And then my team did communication and change management. Because Reno or Nevada is a big geography, and politics and geography kind of go hand in hand, we had to make the team mobile. So we would go from Reno, we would do work in Reno and have people travel from Las Vegas who were on the team. And conversely, when we would move to Vegas, people from Reno would have to fly down. So there was necessary participation from all schools. Everyone had to travel. And we needed the people, our school's best people. That was a challenge. Large campuses had more resources than small campuses. But the project budget did include some money to help campus with backfill needs, to allow those very important people to participate as fully as they could. As I said, people were empowered. I think the thing that made our deployment very successful is we had very clear visions and principles that were provided by our regents. And they were designed to help us keep focused, and they were everywhere. We had large posters made. They were in every design room. They were in hallways. They were at campuses. They were in training rooms and testing rooms. Everyone knew what our vision was. Quickly, it basically was our vision, or our region's vision, was to provide the campuses, the system office, and the regions with a single version of NC-wide financial data in the most efficient and effective manner, implementing best practices in business and administrative processes, and eliminating unnecessary back office functions across NC, ensuring consistent and effective policies are in place. And our principles to guide us in our design sessions were: you need to transform how NC does business, follow standard business processes system-wide that works for everyone, adopt a native Workday, eliminate duplicative and unnecessary back office functions, design an efficient structure for shared services, and dramatically move away from a paper-based environment. Those are that's a high level kind of discussion of it, but that's where they wanted us to go. So that's how what the teams used to make their decisions. While the teams did their work, we used this time for extensive communication and change management activities. Our campus executives, each campus had a kickoff. The president and the vice presidents for finance, all of their finance and HR executives presented this. They were excited about the road we were on. They made the presentations. Their whole campus community was made aware of what was going on. Our change management team also went from campus to campus. We kind of did road shows during the implementation. We did demonstrations to allow people to just get a look and feel for it. And as soon as the design was beginning to take shape, we went out again and did a day in the life demo. Here's what your life might look like. These are some of the things that you're going to see something that looks similar to this. And it proved to be very effective. And then our campuses also did the same thing, adding demos and classes for their teams. We actually formed 3 important groups across the system. We had change management liaisons from each campus. We had communication liaisons from each campus, and we had training liaisons from each campus. They all developed a plan together, and then they executed it together, and they all participated in helping one another with the activities that they delivered to their campuses. We did role-based training at all of our institutions using face-to-face classes, how-to videos, job aids were developed. We had our project website, the Integrate 2 website. We had a Workday website. We had both at the system levels as well at the campus levels. We put communication campaigns in place for awareness and go-live activities. We had a campaign tool that we implemented and we supported centrally that allowed our campuses to perform segmented mailings, segmented campaigns, and do other go-live communications. This allowed our campus liaisons to this tool allowed them to see who received the communications, did they open them, did they click through and follow the links that were provided, where were they when they opened them. We actually found someone who opened one of these while they were on vacation in Europe. But it was very, very important in managing change and understanding how will adoption go, giving us some early insights into Are people paying attention? Conversion takes time. That is something that I would say we still had to do cleanup after go live. So pay attention to conversion, and that's a change process as well. And I think the thing we've learned, and it's kind of exciting, change is the new normal. Change management never ends. The project may go live, but change management never ends. And Workday, who, twice a year they come out with new releases, you keep your change management and your communication and your training teams active even after go live. And people are becoming more comfortable with change. So these are some of the things that we realized. We have many benefits from Workday, but the most important ones is we now have standardization and efficiencies across the system. We have much better security into data and compliance. We have one source of the truth. We have one chart of accounts. We have shared business processes that work for everyone. We have one employee record, a single system of record for HR and finance, and our employees have one experience. And that's so important for people that move across. We have people who work at multiple institutions. We have a single security model. And we have eliminated or decommissioned over 20 point solutions or ancillary systems that were in the pre-Workday world. Things like, I don't have an exhaustive list, but recruiting systems, leave systems, data warehouse systems, tools that were built for employee self-service, things like that. We have mobile access, and it gets a lot of use. The statistics we get every month about how many people use mobile it's growing all the time. We have eliminated extensive amounts of paper. One example is that we have eliminated more than 5,000 timesheets per pay cycle. We have our leave is now calculated in the system. It's digitized. I mean, it's formulated, and it has really increased our visibility into managing our compensated leave liability. I don't have the current leave liability, but in 2015 it was $32 million. That's an important thing to manage. Our faculty contracts are all automated using a business process with no hand signatures. And expense reimbursements get to an employee's bank account in days instead of weeks. So a phenomenal improvement in processing time. Lessons learned, I think I talked about a few already, but I will say that big one is this is a business project. This is not an IT project. We are merely facilitators. Leadership has to come from the functional side, and simplify. Try not to automate paper processes. It just doesn't work in Workday. So simplify as much as you possibly can. We unuse Workday business processes when you can. We designed a very complicated onboarding process because we had a lot of pride in the way we did it. And as a matter of fact, we just redesigned it within 6 months because it was so cumbersome and it was not efficient and things were getting stuck and things weren't getting completed. So our subject matter experts redesigned it so that it would flow, that everything got done. But the message there is simplify. Go live is when you stop using your legacy applications. You turn them off. And now you're completely in Workday. So go live is really just the beginning. You're still cleaning up business processes, you're cleaning up data, you're finding better ways to do things. Additionally, like I said earlier, the new functionality that really is released twice a year, people are always thirsting for more. Wow, we can do that now too. So there's a big enthusiasm for new things they can do as they become more comfortable with this new automated world. So there's always some kind of change underway, and it is just the beginning. Executive support and governance really, I think, are key. And write it down. Put your memorandum of understanding down. How will governance work? How will we make decisions? How do we form user groups, prioritize what those needs are, and then how are you going to prioritize the needs within the needs? Listen to your users what don't they like, and what do they want to see next. They can be a big support. We have governance meetings on a very regular basis, weekly, as a matter of fact. Keep support materials up to date as part of governance. Again, twice a year there's going to be changes, so there's continual updating of your job aids and your videos to make sure that they reflect the current processes within your Workday system. And of course, every new release means communicating new features to everyone who was there, so no one is surprised. We might even say part of governance is who's calling your support desk and what are they asking about, looking at trends. But all in all, governance is so important for the project as well as post-go live. But I guess I would leave you with saying, be prepared to be positively surprised. It was a great journey, and I hope this provided you with a little bit of information going forward.
Thank you, Roberta. That was awesome. Thank you for walking us through the Nevada System of Higher Education Workday journey to date. This was a lot of great information going back to some of the challenges that you saw before Workday and the value that you're seeing now that you've gone live. So thank you for that, Roberta. At this time, we are going to open up the chat for questions. This is the Q&A portion of today's webinar. As a reminder to all attendees, everyone will remain muted. If you have a question, please submit your questions in the Q&A box that you can find at the bottom of your screen, and we'll take as many questions as time allows over the next 24 minutes. Again, this is the Q&A portion of our webinar. All attendees are muted. Please submit your questions in the Q&A box that can be found at the bottom of your screen, and we'll take as many questions as time allows. All righty, so it looks like our first question has come in. Roberta, you talked about how you engaged the working groups in the deployment, but can you share how you worked with your peers in HR and finance in the selection process?
I guess, would you repeat that question? You really want to know how we worked with our functional leaders in finance and HR during the selection process?
Yes, yes. Mm-hmm.
We actually, we did form teams. We had people who were identified by our institutions representing their needs in the HR and finance worlds. And those people were brought together, and we organized ourselves and had regular meetings to define. We reviewed they actually helped build the bid documents. They looked at what the requirements were in the bid. They validated that that's what they needed. When the responses came in, we would meet on a regular basis. We had video conference meetings, sometimes face-to-face meetings, but they evaluated each response. They weighed and the criteria. Did this meet it? Did it exceed it? Is there a gap? What's the gap? All of our campuses provided those functional leaders to participate in the preparation and the review. More people from our functional areas were really brought together for the demonstrations, and our vendors were required to demonstrate both in the Reno area, and a demonstration in Reno for our northern campuses and a demonstration in Reno for our southern campuses. Once again, very much a scripted demo to show the features that they discussed in their bid responses. So really we just facilitated the dialogue, we facilitated the activity, and we did participate on the technical aspect of it, but those functional requirements were built and designed by our functional folks from all the institutions. I hope that answers the question.
Yes, that does. Thank you, Roberta. Looks like we have another question coming in from chat. Who is the chair of your governance committee, Roberta? What department does that chair roll into?
So our governance committee, I'm going to say that they're talking about post-live.
Yes, I believe so. Yeah.
So our post-live governance, we actually have multiple committees. We have an executive committee that is over our HR executive committee, and that is chaired. It is led by our lead HR person, who is also functional, as well as one of our campus functional leads. The members of that committee are basically our HR officers and some other key our HR analysts from our institutions. So those people are the people that is the top of the governance model. They will decide the priorities and what gets worked on first on the HR side. We have an executive committee similarly designed for our finance side that has representatives from our business offices, as well as functional and technical leads from the business. And then there is the payroll actually falls under the HR and payroll are combined. And then we have a change management and communication and training governance group that is led by me and co-led by one of our change managers from one of our institutions. And we make decisions on what kind of changes in training, what kind of modification and directions we take for communications training and change management activities. If those people need help, then the next step up is going to be going to our campus executives, which are basically a group of business officers and HR officers from across the institutions.
Okay, thank you, Roberta. The next question that has come in is around budgeting for the NSHE Workday project. So the question, Roberta, is, was there a system-wide budget for the project? If so, where did those funds come from? Was it the legislature, system, campuses, all of the above?
It was a project budget, so it was across the board. It was for our internal costs for travel. Everything was absorbed by the project. Backfill was absorbed by the project, as well as the subscription and the implementation services. Those funds were provided system-wide by our regents from specific discretionary funds and investments that they had made.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Roberta. Looks like the next question that came in is in regards to the actual implementation of the Workday project at NSHE. So what strategies did you incorporate to get through conversion for so many disparate systems?
Do it again and again and again. We did a lot of repetition. We did form two other collaborative groups, and one of them on the technical side, and one of them was a data governance group. And so we did begin to understand where we were going to have trouble. We built tools to help move that data, knowing what format it was in and where it was going. They identified people who were going to be responsible for cleanup, but we did have a group of people supporting the data in those other systems that were brought together in a data governance group to help figure out how they were going to make sure they did the best job possible.
Okay. The next question in regards to implementation, Roberta, question from the chat: what application do you use to keep, what application do you use to keep the documents current and accessible to all?
Are you talking about training documents or job aids, things like that? What kind of documents?
I believe that, yeah, I want to say that's more of a go live, so the job aids that you talked about in the governance portion. So yes.
We use simple tools that people know how to use, but we actually have a repository of job aids that our trainers keep current. And I honestly can't tell you what specific tools are, but they're always there in a PDF kind of format when it reaches the repository, so that end users can access it while they're in Workday. I can get
Thank you.
I'm happy to get you specifics of all of the specific tools that they use for the webinars as well as the job aids, if that's helpful.
Okay. Thank you, Roberta. Next question. Is there an organizational change management framework or model that Workday has created that can be shared? Was that part of your process at all, Roberta?
So would you read that question again?
The question is there an organizational change management framework or model that Workday has created that can be shared? So
I don't know that Workday, I'm not sure I understand the question. Workday didn't create our change management model. We kind of did, but we certainly will share it. How we organized our change management plan and why. We're happy to share that.
Okay. Next question. Who did you grant Workday community access to and at what point in the project?
Well, we granted Workday community access to anyone who wanted it whenever they asked.
Okay. Okay. Alrighty. Next, we have some go live questions coming in. Can you describe your post go live team structure and where this group lives in the organization structure? Is it in IT or a new org? That's part one. And then the next part of this question is also with this team, this team structure does it consist of any support from Workday? So any support for Workday rather. So HR, functional leads, integration, report writers, or change managers.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, the post go live organization is similar to the implementation model. We have a lead over HR. She is functional. The support organization actually sits within System Computing Services. We have a Workday project director that has this team, and she actually reports to the Chief Information Officer and to the Chief Financial Officer at the system. But the organization it's organized similar to the pillars we had during implementation. We have an HR team that is responsible for ensuring the governance is executed correctly. So it's the lead who is functional and business analysts that support that. There's a lead for payroll and business analysts under there to support the ongoing configuration and changes. There is one for finance that has several BAs for grants and some of the other financial accounting, many of the other things. We have a lead for technical activities, which includes data governance. It includes report writing and things of that nature. So that's under a separate pillar. And then we have a change management pillar. I co-lead that with, there's me, I have a communications officer, I have a training coordinator and 2 trainers, I have 2 help desk people that work on that as well. And we support testing for some of the changes made to the system, as well as ongoing, we still collaborate with our campuses and the liaison groups, but that support structure for ongoing changes to the Workday implementation is a pretty small group of people, probably a couple of dozen.
Okay, thank you, Roberta. Next question, do you receive grants which require time and effort reporting? If so, how are you able to separate your labor allocation and time and effort allocation?
So we do have grants implemented. All of our institutions certainly do some kind of grants, and our 2 universities and our research institute have a lot of grants. We have a grants task force that is working to make sure that the grants configuration is set to meet our needs. I cannot answer specifically that question, but if you would be willing to accept a written response, I'm happy to do that after the fact. But we do effort reporting, and it does require change, a different way of doing things. But I'm happy to provide an answer in writing. I really couldn't. I don't have the knowledge base in my head to answer that question right now.
Okay. Thank you, Roberta. Next question: if you had to do it again, what would you change in the project planning process?
Wow. You know, I think we did a pretty good job. I think that the one thing that our lesson learned in that was um, we we wanted to do too much too fast. People just, they didn't understand how big a change this new technology was. So upfront education, maybe why things are going to take some time, and just level setting ourselves a little bit differently about uh, how complicated is it going to be, how tough is it going to be to find something that everybody can do the same. But I tell you, the one thing I think we did extremely well was to upfront, before we even issued a bid or thought about what our requirements were, we, as a system, at a functional level, conducted those two studies on, can we live with the chart of accounts and can we live with common business processes? We learned a lot about what one another did and who did it really well and who wasn't quite as efficient. And so with that whole process there, I think was one of the best things we did. Estimating the time it would take to make it happen, I would say that's the thing where that was our Achilles heel. We didn't know enough about this new technology to have a realistic implementation plan.
Okay. Thank you, Roberta. Next question is a question since going live. So since going live, have you completed a cost savings analysis for the Workday project? And if so, approximately what has been the savings?
You know, we did a lot of that work with the Workday team came in and they did this value realization project with us. And a lot of that we did come up with numbers. I don't think we have a baseline number, across the board, how much money we've saved, but we did identify a lot of the systems and things that went away. I can't give you a dollar amount right now, but we do have a lot of that stuff documented. We presented it to our Board of Regents, and the value realization details that came out of that. We were involved in identifying those kinds of things, but I don't have necessarily a number I can give you today.
Okay. Thank you. Next question, what is your positive and negative surprise about Workday after going through this project?
Well, I just think that the Workday community is amazing. Their model as a business, the kind of people they hire. I think the positive is that the community is there. Everyone collaborates. Everyone helps one another. They learn from one another. I think that it's the kind of product and organization that I see strategically looking at this next millennial kind of generation that have a different focus on business and the things that they focus on. And I think they're agile. Working with Workday has been pretty positive. In terms of a negative, I don't know that I can necessarily say that working with Workday has had a negative, other than it's not a negative about Workday. Like I said, I think the thing that I said earlier, simplify your processes. Don't try and automate what you do today in Workday. And that is a learning curve that I think it takes some people a little bit longer to understand, because you can complicate your processes, which causes more redesign after you go live. And we're realizing a little bit of that now. A lot of our groups are saying, we didn't do a very good job of efficiently building those business processes. Let's go back and redesign them. So we are going back to redesign a lot of processes. It's not a bad thing, but I wish we had more of a sensitivity to the importance of that early on.
Okay, thank you, Roberta. Next question. Apart from general benefits mentioned, so system consolidations, etc., what is the one quick benefit you are already seeing across the organization, something that is quantifiable in value?
Read that to me one more time.
Apart from general benefits mentioned, what is the one quick benefit you are already seeing across the organization?
Well, I guess we're efficient. I mean, we're all doing things the same way. We are given up trying to do it our way instead of the way that is best for everyone. I just think people have a different mindset about how these systems are making them more efficient. People are on Workday all the time. People log on to Workday on a daily basis, and they are engaged in it. With our old system, I mean, we had 2,500 people touching our technology systems, and with Workday, we've got, 13,000 people on a regular basis, on a daily basis, are logging on to Workday.
Okay. All right, thank you, Roberta. It looks like we are coming down to our last question here. So what advice or tips do you have, Roberta, for the institutions on the line today who are evaluating Workday or even planning their implementation?
Wow, that's a big the one thing, I guess. Talk to other people. I mean, I think there's lots of people out there who um, can help you make sure that the lessons learned that they've had, and people out there are very, very happy to help. But I think customers, Workday customers, are going to tell you the good news and they're going to tell you the bad news to try and keep you out of trouble. But it's a good community. The Workday community is a pretty phenomenal group of people, at least the ones we've run into so far. And we are big participants in the higher ed user group. And if I think a lot of you are in higher education who are on the call today, and you have a chance to participate with those people in community, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised.
Okay. It looks like that's our last, let me double check. That looks like that's our last question from the queue, from our chat box today. I don't see another question coming through. Okay, Roberta, so again, thank you so much for spending the last hour with us and all those that have joined us today. We appreciate your time and sharing your experience, your Workday experience with NSHE and the 8 institutions that fall under NSHE that serve 26,000 employees and over 109,000 students. We appreciate your time. For everyone that joined today, we appreciate you spending a part of your morning or your afternoon with us, and we hope that you found this this webinar helpful in answering any questions that you have regarding what it will be like to be a Workday higher education customer. In terms of next steps, you'll receive from us in the coming days a thank you email, as well as a link to the recording of today's webinar should you want to revisit this information. And you can feel free to follow up with any of your Workday account executives at the end of this call as well. Again, thank you for your time, everyone, and have a great remainder of the week and a great holiday next week. Thank you very much.